So we're back on Love Your Channel. This is where we talk to YouTube creators and get to know something about them, their channels, and how they use YouTube to share their interests, hobbies, passions, opinions, expertise, and so on with the world. So every now and then you see something on YouTube that gets your attention because it's different. And I don't necessarily mean a whole new topic, but just like a fresh take or a unique twist on a familiar topic. And that's what I saw a few weeks ago from a channel called Mass Replay. Okay, so the channel is all about retro gaming, and the video that was recommended to me was about how much it would have cost back in the day to beat a game called Dragon's Lair, which took me back immediately because I remember this game as a kid. Nothing special today, but at the time it was like, wow, graphically it was like another universe. But anyway, that's a different subject. Maybe we'll talk about that later. But so again, how much would it cost to finish the game? Because you have to remember, back in the day, you had to feed quarters into the machine, and you had to feed lots into the machine if you wanted to progress and actually beat the game. In fact, I think Dragon's Lair may have been 2 quarters at a time. I think it was, as a matter of fact. But so anyway, I see this video. I'm thinking this is a great angle, great way to combine lots of things about retro gaming. And all the while I'm watching the Dragon's Lair video, other videos in the series, I'm visualizing all these quarters disappearing into the machine. Anyway, I reached out to the creator behind the channel. I'm happy to say he's agreed to come on and talk to me about the channel, Dragon's Lair, and retro gaming, and lots of other stuff. His name is Steve. Before we go any further, let's give a warm welcome to Steve. Thanks for joining me on Love Your Channel.
Hi, John. Thanks for having me.
All right. Everybody gets the first question, the same first question, I should say, Steve. Let's say you meet somebody who just learns that you have a YouTube channel. They ask you what it's all about. How do you answer?
So my YouTube channel is about retro gaming, with a very heavy focus on arcades. My main series on the channel is called Arcade Economy, where I take a look at old arcade games, determine how much it costs to beat them back in the day. And by that, I mean, then I will adjust that cost for inflation today to really see how much it would have cost with the purchasing power. But also, I take a look at how fair the games were too, and I created what's called like a predatory meter. If you think of like a predatory loan, to determine like really how fair each game was. And while I'm doing that, I provide a lot of context for the games in case maybe you're not familiar with the game. So I go into kind of the development and the history of it, and some of the gameplay mechanics, and then I kind of give my take on like why I think it's fair or why I think it's unfair. Um, and yeah, I guess that's my main series, but I do have a few other videos on the channel, but that's really the one that's been taking off.
So tell us something more about yourself and what you're all about. What keeps you busy when you're not playing retro games, making videos about retro games, talking about retro games, and so on?
As many people have noticed, I'm a very big metalhead, with my Gojira shirt and my Black Sabbath hat. I do attend a lot of metal concerts annually. I think I'm actually going to see Iron Maiden for the seventh time this year. Seventh time over the course of my lifetime, not in 1 year. But and I believe they're playing with Megadeth and Anthrax. It's like three of my favorite bands there. Um, so I'm a really big metalhead. In my day job, I'm a digital marketer, and I play a ton of video, not just retro games, but this is coming out the end of February. I believe Resident Evil 9 just dropped today. That's something I'm looking forward to getting into. So
Let me start with a big picture question about retro games, especially today in this age of perfect graphics and huge productions and online multiplayer and so on. There's still a huge fan base for games that were released 40 years ago or more.
yeah.
How do you explain, or what's your take on the fact that these games still have an enduring appeal despite what on paper look like better options today?
Yeah, I think if a game has good gameplay mechanics, I do feel like the visuals can come second. Although I do feel like there are also a lot of games from the 80s and 90s that pixel art wise are still hold up today and are beautiful. Um the way that I look at games is almost the way that someone might look at movies. in that sort of medium where the classics are classics, and as long as most of them, not all of them, but most of them will still hold up today, as long as they have those mechanics that are still kind of fluid, and you still kind of get that reward from playing the game. There are some games that get dated, and you kind of go back and play them, and you're like, wow, how did I ever manage these gameplay mechanics? Um, but even that can kind of be fixed these days too, where you can kind of like remap uh, the um, the controls to make it more feel like a more modern feel. So yeah, the way I look at games, I really think they should be talked about the way that we talk about movies. Game developers should be talked about the way that we talk about movie directors. And I think we are kind of getting there too. Like video games have come a long way.
Is there a certain, maybe a certain year or maybe a console generation or something else that you consider to be the cutoff for retro?
So my very first console was a Super Nintendo. Um, I got it for Christmas. I think I was 6 years old when that happened. And it was still kind of new, early '90s. And I had played Nintendo, the original NES. I think prior to the NES, like the Atari, the Intellivision, those types of games, I don't really have the nostalgia for, and I know that some people do. It's really hard for me to get into those games. At the same time, though, the arcades that were coming out around those times, like Donkey Kong, Dragon's Lair, Pac-Man, like those, I feel like are very easy to play and visually miles ahead of like the Atari 2600 or the Intellivision. Um, but I think that generation, I think that's generation 2 of consoles, is my cutoff at least. Generation 3 onwards, I can play almost anything, but in those, I'm, like, really picky with that era of games.
So you don't think, for example, I don't know, Sega Genesis or PlayStation 1, that's post-retro? I don't know what we would call it, but it's not retro?
I actually would consider, like, PS2 and before retro. I mean, when you really think about it, that's over 20 years ago now that those came out.
What is PS2?
Um
99, 98, 90,
No, PS2 was 2001, I think?
2001? Okay, all right, all right.
Yeah, because PS1 was '96.
Oh,
So
PS1 was 90. Oh, I thought it was PS1 was 93. If only I had
yeah.
some magical tool that I could check. Oh, sorry.
So,
Uh,
yeah, I think PS2, and I think, we're getting to a place where, like, PS3, that generation, I think that's the 6th generation, don't quote me on it, though. But, like, that generation, I think, was a really big jump, and I think once you hit that PS3 generation, the jumps in, like, graphics, um, aren't as big as, say, going from, like, NES to SNES, and then SNES to N64, and then N64 to GameCube. Like, those jumps are all huge, and then once you go, like, GameCube to Wii, or, like, PS2 to, I'm sorry, PS2 to PS3 is kinda big, but then after that is, like, it's,
I know what you're on. I think the economics nerds call it the law of diminishing returns. I think that's what they're on about.
yes, that's exactly it, yeah.
Every generation that it gets, there is an improvement, but it's less impressive somehow.
Yeah, and you can make PS3 games with, like, mods and graphic packs now, like, look pretty close to what we're playing today, so
For sure. Okay, Steve, I want to get to know something more about you, about vintage games, about Mass Replay, but I want to cover a lot of ground pretty quickly here. So we're gonna go to
sure.
something I call rapid fire. So I
Okay.
need short or short-ish answers. Okay, so Steve,
Alright.
are
I
you
tend to
ready?
ramble, so I'll try not to.
All right, keep the rambling to a minimum. Steve, are you ready for rapid fire?
I am.
All right, let's do it. What is your go-to snack and drink combo for extended gaming sessions?
I usually just drink water. So water
Wow,
and
was not expecting that.
yeah, well, unless I'm, like, drinking alcohol. But usually I just drink water. Water and probably, like, chips.
Okay, all right. I'm not sure if water qualifies as a proper gaming beverage, but I'll accept it. I'll accept it. Best old school beat 'em up game ever.
Oh, man.
Got to choose one.
Alien versus Predator.
Ooh, nice one. Nice one. Now you mentioned this a little bit earlier, but just expand on this point. Do you have time to play games that are kind of outside the scope of your channel? And if so, what are the games you're playing right now?
Yes, I love all games. I play current games, but I won't go into detail since this is rapid fire. I just downloaded Resident Evil 9, so I'm going to be playing that. And I also played Marvel Rivals a lot.
I was looking at the review of Resident Evil 9 earlier today. Wow, it looks amazing. It looks
I'm
amazing.
very excited.
The 50-50 combo of the survival horror and the action horror is what it seems to
Yeah.
be anyway, but I'm looking forward to it as well. So you do unboxings, subpar unboxings, as you call them. What do you think, what is it about unboxings generally that is just so satisfying?
um, I think it's seeing the new, fresh, material product, whatever that you're unboxing, like in its wrapping, and I think it kind of brings you back to like a kid at Christmas type of thing. You know, of like of unboxing this new product and seeing it close up.
Yeah, I could
Yeah,
unbox like garden tools and it's still cool. I don't know. There's something about it just, I don't know, it connects with our psyche somehow. I like
it
it.
does. Yeah.
If you could put just one original full size arcade cabinet in your living room, what game are you going with?
Um, I mean, I have an arcade one up of Mortal Kombat 2.
Yeah, I see it. That's sweet.
So, um, I don't know if that's a cop out of an answer, but I would say it's either that, it's either Mortal Kombat 2 or it's Die Hard Arcade.
If you could go back in time to an arcade in the 80s and impress everybody with your mad skills, get the big group behind you, all these people wondering who is this gaming god? Uh, what game would it be on?
Easy, Dragon's Lair.
Really?
Yeah, because it took me so long to figure out and I remember everything by heart now. I think I played that game for 6 hours to get that down on Arcade Economy, and I might trip up here and there, but it
Nice.
shouldn't take me too long to get there, and I think that's a game that people enjoy watching more than playing.
Yeah, just as a quick aside, I'm skeptical if anybody back in the day, I'm
Yeah,
skeptical if anybody actually finished that thing. I mean, how much money did you have to drop? Well, actually, we know, thanks to you, we know how much had to drop. But I think most people were like me. You dropped a couple of dollars and realized you were like 3 minutes into it and said, I'm never going to finish this. But okay, last question, a rapid fire, Steve. If you had to start a new YouTube channel tomorrow, nothing about gaming, something totally different, what would your new channel be about?
nothing about gaming. I would probably go back to what I had initially started with when I started YouTube, which was doing more like commentary on movies, TV shows, stuff like that.
So, Steve, congratulations. You have successfully completed rapid fire. Well done. Well
It's
done.
very hard not to go into added context there.
I know. Too many choices, too many options, too many games to choose from. Quick reminder to everybody that Love Your Channel is available as a podcast version as well. You can find us on Spotify, on Apple Podcast, and Amazon Music. Links in the description below. Okay, Steve, let's turn to your channel here. Looking through your history, I notice that there is a kind of evolution that seems to include at least 3 different iterations of the channel with some fairly long breaks in between them. Give us an overview of the history of the channel and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, I'll try not to bore you, but it is a long story. So initially, the channel was called Cool Nerd Show. That was the first iteration of the channel, and it was me and 3 of my friends, and I had a friend who's actually part of Mass Replay now, my friend Scott. Um, he, at the time, was kinda staying at my house on weekends, and I walked into my living room where he was kinda staying, and he was watching Collider. I don't know if you're familiar with the Collider, but they would cover, a lot of, like, what was popular at the time, like Arrow and Flash and those, like, superhero shows, and they would do this, like, long extended kind of podcast thing where they talk about the shows and whatnot, and we were really into those, and I had gone to film school, so I was like, "Hey, we could do this." This is something that we have the capability to do. So he was like, I would love to do that. So that kind of started. Then I got 2 of my other friends on, and we did this kind of like weekly review of movies, of like comic book TV shows that also would double as a podcast, and that's how Cool Nerd Show got started. Uh, we had a video on The Walking Dead that if anyone remembers, there was this big cliffhanger in one of the seasons where one of the characters, Negan, had killed someone, but they didn't reveal who it was. We put out like a "Who did Negan kill?" video, and our prediction was correct. And that video like took off and hit like 500,000 views or something, and kind of gave us a little bit of popularity at the time. But then after doing it for a few years, we kind of got like creative differences between everyone. I felt like I was putting in a lot of work, and some people disagreed with like the direction of the channel, and it just didn't become fun anymore. And we're all still friends and whatnot, so it wasn't like that bad. But it got to a point where it was like, this isn't fun. I don't really want to do this anymore. So there really wasn't a reward. So I stopped. Um, and then I had always been, had a love of video games. So then I started streaming, and that's what became the second iteration of the channel, which was solely just me streaming games. And I wanted to play through entire franchises from the first game to the last game, and then kind of give my review along the way, and talk about like which games I thought were better and rank them and whatnot. So that lasted for a little bit. Um, and then it got to the point where also like wasn't really seeing a big reward. I was kind of streaming to no one, and it became a lot of work, and it kind of fell through the cracks, and I kind of just like fizzled out. Uh, I did meet other creators as I was doing that though, and they would constantly bring me back on their podcasts, bring me back to play on their streams and stuff like that, even though I wasn't really doing it anymore. So Scott and I then kind of linked up, and Scott started doing his own other YouTube channel. I think I mentioned he was the other person that I started Cool Nerd Show with. So we started doing stuff like that. We started talking about maybe like reviving the channel again. We brought back Cool Nerd Show. We started doing some movie reviews. I had the other creators that I had talked with were asking like, when are you guys going to start making videos again? And I had told them of this idea that I had around focusing on like arcade games, and how fair they were. And that was an idea I had brewing. And eventually I just kind of released Arcade Economy on a whim of just saying like, all right, here's my idea. I want to go into how much it costs to beat, but also how fair they were, but also kind of give some backstory on the game too. And I released the very first Arcade Economy in February of 2025, uh, under the name Cool Nerd Show. If you notice in that video, I start off by saying, "What's up, nerds?" which is what we used to say on Cool Nerd Show. And I think the third Arcade Economy was X-Men, and that was the one that just like blew up and got like 500,000 views. And then people started going back and watching the other two that I did, which was Captain America and the Avengers and the Punisher. Um, and from then I was like, oh, people like this. I think I should start like exploring more arcade games and doing it there. And then it just like absolutely took off. And then I had talked with Scott and was like, we can't call this Cool Nerd Show anymore because it's not really like a show. We got to change the name. It just doesn't fit. So that's when we decided on Mass Replay. And now Scott, we also do live streams. So Scott streams with me every Monday. We're live. We're playing um all different types of retro games, but Arcade Economy is really like the driver of Mass Replay right now. We are going to branch out, but it does take a long time to create these. Like it takes me around 20 hours to create the video, um and get it out.
Like I said in the intro, I think a unique twist, a different angle on a familiar topic really gets attention. And in this case, for example, I mean, it's almost like you're connecting or like reaching out to two audiences. Like your retro gaming audience is going to be interested already, but the
Yeah.
financial angle to it just makes it accessible to just another audience who might not be interested, for example, in a video about Dragon's Lair. But when it's framed in terms of how much would you have had to spend back in the day, well, that's a whole different conversation, and it makes it much more interesting. So I just think that you're kind of like, it's a bridge between audiences. And I think at least in part, that seems to be behind the success. What do you think?
Oh, 100%. And that's the reason why I title the videos like that too. And the reason also why I title how much in X year is because one of the big parts was I wanted to adjust this for inflation. Because and yeah, like no one inflation, the number is negotiable of like what real inflation is, but I think it says something when you say like, "Oh, well, spending, $20 back in '85 actually feels like spending the same like spending, I don't know, 100." I'm just going off numbers, $120 today or whatever it is. That seems really high. But yeah, but you get what I'm saying.
I do, I do, I do.
Like
And you have a
to put
cool,
it
you have
puts
a
it in
cool,
perspective.
you have a cool visual representation of it as well with the receipt. I like the way you kind of print things out. Here's the cost. Here's the actual cost of the game. Speaking of that, speaking of the receipt, what can you tell me about like what are the metrics? What's the formula for kind of putting these numbers together? You mentioned the inflation, which,
Yep.
as you mentioned, to be fair, cannot be absolutely precise, but you can be generally correct about the inflation numbers. But take us through the math of calculating the number of quarters that go into this virtual machine.
So I think if you want to survive YouTube, you have to constantly be adapting and changing. If you expect to put out the same type of content for 5 years, 6 years, it's gonna fail because eventually people are gonna get fatigued on it and they're gonna stop watching and that. So my one thing is like you always need to be adapting and try, not be afraid of trying new things. Um, so if you look at my first video, the Captain America one, there's no receipt. There's no there's just here's how much I cost, here's my predatory score, which goes from 1 to 5, not 1 to 10. So there's a lot of feedback goes into it where people will comment and be like, "Oh, you should do this, you should do that." And sometimes I'll be like, "Oh, that's a pretty good idea." And then sometimes that kind of evolves into something else. The receipt actually happened because I was doing the Simpsons arcade and I wanted to make it look like a Quickie Mart receipt. And I was like, "Oh, that would be funny to put like," and I at the bottom I think I put like "Thank you, come again." Um like it would be funny to do like a receipt almost as if like you're getting this receipt from the Quickie Mart and with all like the itemized numbers. And people will request different metrics. Like they'd be like, "Oh, you should do how long you play. Like show us how long you played, or show us how much it costs to beat each boss." And that kind of is like, "Oh, that is a good idea. I think I will add that." So then like I'll take that feedback and any types of metrics now. Like now, I initially started off just me doing it, and now I have with 2 player games. Scott will join me in the playthrough, and I'll do 1 player data, 2 player data, also to kind of like match that up. Of like, oh, did you really save money if you had a second player, or did you lose money? Um, so I'm always trying to evolve, explore new ways of how to like get this data across. And you can see that as you go through my videos of like how bare bones it really was from the beginning and how it is now with like all this extra data around it.
And I think you make a good point when you say that you have to grow and evolve. You have to be like humble enough to accept the fact that maybe you're not right on everything and other people have some
Yeah.
creative contributions to make, and maybe they're on target, maybe they're not, but you have to be open to that conversation. And the result often is a better experience for everybody. You get, you're more satisfied with the video you're creating, the viewers are happier, everybody wins. And so, yeah, excellent point. Excellent
Yeah,
point.
and a follow-up because I've realized I also didn't, answer the second half of your question, which was how do I determine like, where the score lands? Initially, I just kinda went on, like, vibes of, like, this feels like a 3, and then also people in the comments would start to be like, "Well, how are you determining this? You just feel like it should be that?" And that got me thinking like, "Yeah, that's kinda you're kinda right." Um, so I started going into like, "Okay, well, let's break this all down and look at it by, like, well, how much did it cost me? How much did it cost per minute to beat? How much fun did I have? Were the mechanics like easy to understand? Is there a learning curve?" So all of that goes into my scoring now of like and holds a certain type of weight. Like I'll take the cost per minute as one of the highest values, right? Because if it's like 5 cents per minute, and you're playing for a few hours, then I feel like that's a really good value. But if it's 50 cents per minute and you're playing for, a half hour and maybe you're spending the same amount, well, it's like you're not really getting the same amount of quote unquote fun for like bang for your buck as you are if you're playing for a longer time. So that weighs in a bunch, but it's also how easily understandable is this game? Dragon's Lair is a perfect one. A lot of people put a few quarters in and died immediately and was like, I don't even know what I did. So like that
Yeah,
bumps
that
the
was me.
score
That
of
was me.
that up.
I know that
Yeah.
very well, Steve, because that was me every time I played it, basically. So yeah.
Yeah. So like all of I try to take all of that and factor it in. And I've even been thinking about maybe going back to some of my earlier games and like re-scoring them because maybe I didn't score them fairly. And now that I have almost 30 games that I've covered now, I can kind of look at all of my data and be like, oh, well, let's take a look at this again. But that's really what goes into everything when I take a look at the predatory score.
Well, two things quickly. One, I love the visualization of the score, the meter, the predator, the predatory score, predator, of course. How Arnold gets the 0 or the 1, I'm not sure how that works exactly, but okay, let's just go with it because they're enemies or opposites.
That's
That's fine.
exactly that's why I
Yeah,
put that there.
yeah. And the other thing I wanted to point out is that yeah, you actually get deep in the weeds on this when you're explaining why you gave a certain score. Because I remember, spoiler alert, everybody, if you don't want to hear this, but the score you gave Dragon's Lair was a 9, and you even admit you probably should have given it a 10, because if that's not a 10, what is? But you actually go
Yeah.
into some detail about why it's a 9, and I'm listening to this thinking, okay, yeah, that makes sense. I can believe that. Sounds good. So yeah, so there are very careful gradations between every point on that scale, and you make it clear why
I
it's,
try to
for
defend
example, a
my
9, not a
answers.
10.
Yeah.
You do it very well. So not just in the arcade economy, but all of your videos at the beginning, you often have a very well researched kind of like a mini documentary introduction with
Mhm.
the lore of the game, the development history, and more. How much time usually goes into researching that and preparing maybe a script if that's what you're using?
Yeah. So I always prepare a script. I try to look for stuff that's not just Wikipedia because I don't want to just read Wikipedia, so I'll look for like either like developer interviews, I'll look for other YouTube videos, um, I'll look for other websites. Moby Games is a good website that just kind of gives you info on like who the staff was that works behind games. It's kind of like IMDb but for games. Um, I use that to I'll find out like, okay, well, who was the game designer or who was the game director, and then I'll kind of go into like find out what else they did, and then try to like Google articles around them or articles around like the development of these games. Um, and I'll try to find out through that like how this game came to be, and develop a story. And some people I think most people on my channel love that I go into like the development history, but there are a few that absolutely hate it. That are like I'll get comments, and it happened more earlier on than it does now. But I'll get comments that'll be like, "Just get to the answer the question already." Like I get like a
Wow.
lot of that. Yeah.
Wow.
Um,
Somebody's in a
like
hurry, huh? Just get to the point, huh?
I'm 10 minutes in and he didn't even talk about the cost of the game, like stuff like that. That I don't get as much anymore, but when I was first starting out was way more prevalent.
Can't make everybody happy, Steve.
Yeah,
Cannot make
exactly.
everybody happy. Tell me something about your tech stack for filming and editing and production.
Sure. So tech stack first, many years of accumulating different materials, different products. So you can see I have a Shure mic. I used to have I thought it was over here, but it's not. I used to have a Blue Yeti, but I find that the Shure is a little bit easier to use and creates a little bit better sound. Um, I have a gaming PC that I built that I have a 4090 in it. So that was mostly for gameplay, just because I want to play games at like close to their highest settings, but it definitely helps out with video editing. Um, And then I'm a big AMD fan over Intel. Um, so I have an AMD processor. Uh, in terms of camera, I use a Sony. I don't exactly know the model, but it is Sony. I'm looking at it right now. That's why I'm looking straight into your guys' soul. Zeiss, maybe? I'm not sure. But it's a little kind of flip camera that I have rigged up to the computer that I had to tear like the door off of and put in like a temporary or the battery that you plug in so that it doesn't I don't have to constantly like switch out batteries so I can easily just kind of turn it on, turn it off. Um, I was using a DSLR for a little bit, but that became a huge pain in the ass, and I kind of stopped using it. And it wasn't really friendly. It didn't play nice with my PC. So I did a little bit of research. I bought this Sony Cam. I've had it for a few years. For the most part, it's okay. One thing I absolutely hate doing is like setting up equipment and setting up filming equipment and stuff like that. So I have a ring light also. I think I think that pretty much covers my tech stack.
How about editing software?
Editing software, I use Adobe Premiere. It's what I learned on it. I've been using it for God 20 years probably. So and I know it by like the back of my hand. I also use some other Adobe. Sometimes I'll use After Effects. I don't really use a lot of After Effectsy type of graphics on in my videos. Um, and I'll use is it I use Audacity sometimes to help with audio editing. Um, yeah, I think that pretty and then Photoshop for like thumbnails and stuff like that.
How about your workflow timeline? How much time are you putting into these videos?
A single arcade economy video can take around 20 hours to make. It starts off usually I will ask so I all right, so there's two different ways of how I kind of ideate these videos. One is I schedule a lot of videos. This is my marketing brain here. I schedule a lot of these videos around real world media releases. So the very first arcade economy was Captain America and the Avengers, and I scheduled that to come out the same week that the Captain America Brave New World came out. The next video that I did was The Punisher, and I scheduled that around when Daredevil Born Again came out. So if a movie is coming out that has some type of arcade video game tied to it, there is a very good chance that you'll see an arcade economy around that coming out. So this year, it is February of 2026 right now. Um, the Michael Jackson biopic is coming out in a couple of months. So I'll be doing Michael Jackson Moonwalker. Mortal Kombat 2 is coming out a month after that, the movie. So I'll be doing Mortal Kombat 2 on Arcade Economy. Um, so that's kind of how I figure out what I'm going to do. And then I, on what I'm not going to like, to fill in the gaps between those, I will usually set a poll for my YouTube audience and say, all right, here's 4 games that I'm thinking of doing. What should I do next? And then whatever they choose, that's the next video that'll go into production for Arcade Economy. Once it goes into production, then I'll do the research as I talked about before, and I'll write the script. I kind of follow the same template. So it's the intro, the development history, the ports, the story of the game, the gameplay, how much the bosses, how much I spent, predatory score, and then support mass replay. And just like that. So I use that template to fill out the script. Once the script's done in a good place, I'll double check it for accuracy. Doesn't always work. Sometimes things get through, and my community certainly lets me know about it. Um, and then I will record. It usually takes anywhere between an hour to 2 hours to record myself because there's a lot of takes that I will have to cut or have to redo. After I get that, then I'll throw it into Premiere. I'll start editing it. Editing definitely takes the longest time. Um, I didn't even talk about when I play the game. So before I do any of writing any of that, once the community decides on what I'm playing or I decide on what release is coming out, then I'll play through the game, record that. For some of my YouTube members and patrons, they'll get to see the live stream. That's like an added bonus I had for them. And then I'll take that. And then from there, I go into production of like script, shooting, editing, and then once the editing is done, then I have to optimize it. So like making sure I'm using the right hashtags on YouTube, making sure I'm using the right YouTube tags, adding the correct links. If I'm taking footage from another creator, make sure that I'm citing them and tagging them in the video, all stuff like that. And then I will try to launch my videos on either like a Tuesday or a Thursday, as I find that that gets the most traffic for me. And I try to get them out every 2 weeks. I try to get one arcade economy out every 2 weeks. If this were my full time job, I'd probably be able to do it every week, but it's not. So 2 weeks seems like the sweet spot for me right now.
You know what, Steve? You mentioned your community a few times there, and that
Yep.
reminds me that you have a members only channel. You're quite active in your comments. It seems to me, it's more of an observation than a question, but it seems to me that especially in the gaming genre,
Mhm.
that interaction with the community seems to be more important to the growth of the channel. Does that sound right to you?
1000%. Um, it is so much harder to grow an engaging community than it is to get 20,000 subscribers on a YouTube channel, I think. That's something that I would love to focus on. I'm trying to do it within my means, but it is something that I find is really hard to do. Just mostly just because of like the bandwidth of your time, having your time, being able to make yourself available to your community and interact with them, and um, make it genuine and fun too. Like you can't just like post, a bunch of different like bland comments or like try to like engagement farm, as they say, because like people will see through that. You have to be genuine, you have to make yourself available, you have to become a friend to everyone in your community, and that takes a lot of time to do.
Let me ask you about YouTube Shorts because this kind of stands out to me when I look at your page. Oh, by the way, I should have mentioned earlier, as we're speaking today, 731 videos. Wow. But only around 10% of those, roughly 10%, are shorts.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering, is this a deliberate strategy to really not put so much focus on shorts, or what's been your experience with shorts? And let me just quickly add, I'm asking because recently I've spoken to creators who say, on one hand, yeah, essential in the age of, doom scrolling and telephones. On the other hand, I hear people say total waste of time, does not create lasting engagement. What's your take on this?
um it's a little bit of in between. I lean more towards the essential part, and again, this is my digital marketing brain coming on, where the way that I view so there are some people who are shorts creators and they do awesome at it, and like that's awesome, that's great. If that's what's working, that's what you got to keep doing. Uh, that is the area that I think things are moving, where if you look at, people are looking at a phone, so they're looking at things in portrait mode. They're scrolling through this way. TikTok and Instagram really drove that. Um, I think you definitely need to have shorts in your strategy if you want to continue to grow. So the way that I look at shorts is I look at that as more of advertisements for my larger videos. Um, and what I will do with a lot of my shorts is I will cut up sections of my videos and post them as shorts. And the one thing I love about YouTube is it has that like call to action that links to the longer video, where you can really just click on that, and then if you choose to go to that longer video. And I think the best example of shorts are like a lot of comedians will have comedian podcasts, right? Um, or actually, I'll give a really good example. So I don't know if you're familiar with this channel, but there's a channel that does the a podcast on Batman the Animated Series, and I think their channel is just called Batman the Animated Series Podcast. They are hilarious. It is one of my favorite channels, and I mostly just watch their shorts. I don't even really listen to their podcast or watch their long form video, but that is their main product, is like their long form video. But they will clip out sections of their podcast, the best moments, and put it on shorts, and that's how I discovered them. And I think that's the avenue. So if you're looking at it from like a marketing funnel, that's like the top of the funnel of where people are discovering them and then kind of pushing them through to get to their podcast. But it is one of my favorite things to watch on YouTube right now. Um, and that's how I view shorts, is like a lot of people aren't going to see your channel, but if they see your shorts, you can drive them to your channel that way. And I think everyone should be in some form or another utilizing shorts.
Yeah, it seems to me that just the nature of your channel, just the retro gaming, it's a natural fit for shorts. So this is the kind of thing
Yeah.
people are going to like. If, on the other hand, who can I pick on here? Let's say if you're if you share videos about how to take apart an engine in your car, maybe not so much. Maybe the longer form is the more comfortable format. But for something like gaming or the entertainment pop culture world, I think shorts are probably a must. Yeah, for
Yeah.
sure. Let's look towards the future of the channel going forward. What can we expect from Mass Replay in terms of, I don't know, what do you want to do in terms of maybe new directions for the content, for the style? What's next?
Yeah, so like I said, we're always trying to look at how we can evolve. Arcade economy is not going anywhere. Like that is the main driver of the channel. So I plan to get out a video every 2 weeks. It will maybe adapt and change in terms of the way that I look at things, the angle of things, as that has always kind of adapted and changed. But I would love to. I have a few ideas of some other series that I would love to get into. I just don't really have the bandwidth to do it at this moment. I did drop a new series in, I believe it was January, called Retrograde, which I have one video for, and that's really just looking at old games to ask if they hold up. Like, does this game hold up? And I use it in kind of the same template of Arcade Economy, where we make the ask like, okay, here's the game we're going to look at. We're going to find out if this holds up in 2026. And then I go through, here was the development of the game, here's why they made it and the changes that they tried to implement, if it's like a sequel to other games. So the first game I looked at there was the Minish Cap, well, The Legend of Zelda: The Minish Cap for the Game Boy Advance. I have a script in development for BioShock. I actually just went back, replayed BioShock, just rebeat it, and that game is almost 20 years old. So I think it's fair to ask, does BioShock hold up? So that's a video that I will get out when I have time. I have a few ideas for some other series too, but like I said, really just bandwidth wise. And then we're doing live streams every Monday, and those are adapting and changing from what they were too. I used to our one of our shows we used to call Sequel Stream, where I would release an arcade economy, and then I'd play like sequels to that arcade game on the live stream. And they did okay, but now we're doing more long form, where we'll play one game that might take us a month to beat, and we'll come back every week to kind of to chip away at it until we beat it. And then we just also launched a gameplay channel because sometimes the niches don't really mix, called Mass Gameplay, and that will have like gameplay highlights on it and maybe more longer form gameplays. But we'll still do the live streams on the Mass Replay channel. So that's kind of what you can expect. I'm always willing to pivot, so things may change. It's really, when we decide what's working, what's not. That's kind of what's going to decide for us.
Sounds like there's a lot of stuff in the pipeline on its way. A
Yes.
lot to look forward to. Let's finish up with some tips and advice, Steve. What can you say to anybody just thinking about starting a channel now or trying to grow one?
Yeah. It's gonna suck for a bit. You have to. I mean, so when we made the transition into Mass Replay from Cool Nerd Show, this channel had around 5,000 subscribers. That was February 2025. It is now February 2026. We just hit 50,000 subscribers.
Congratulations.
So thank you for 10 years, because I think 10 or 15 years is when we started Cool Nerd Show. I'm not saying it's going to take that long for everyone, but um that's how long it took. And we had I think we hit 5,000 subscribers like 2 or 3 years in, and kind of stayed stagnant at that number. And granted, there were breaks and whatnot. Um, but now within this year, we grew 45,000 subscribers. So once you hit a point, a lot of it is there is a good portion of it that's luck, but a lot of it is consistent, and you have to remain consistent. You have to keep doing what you're doing. A lot of your early videos, especially if you don't know anything about editing, or like, you're going to hit bumps in the road. Some of your content, you're going to look back a few years from now and be like, oh man, that video is terrible. But it's all part of the learning and growing process, and you have to be willing to go through that in order to find success.
So mass replay is obviously a must for anybody into retro gaming. It's also a fantastic example of the fact that a fresh take on any topic can find an audience and take a channel to new heights, just like Steve described. Look at what Arcade Economy has done for Steve's channel and the well-deserved viewership it has brought. Never think that all the angles have been covered. Mass replay shows you that a good idea can help you break through. Steve, thanks so much for joining me. I look forward to getting my retro gaming fix on mass replay.
Thanks, John. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Okay, that's it for this time. While you're here, please take a look at one of these other interviews we have with other YouTube creators. Please like and subscribe. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time on Love Your Channel.